Hey, we're live. Brianna, we don't hear you.
Yep.
No, let me see if you're muted.
Thank y'all for being patient. My name's Brianna, and I manage events at General Assembly Austin. Thank y'all so much for joining. I'm going to share some slides to make this real fun. Cool. So if y'all are just now joining, would love for you to introduce yourself in the chat, maybe share your LinkedIn so people can connect with you, and tell us where you're tuning in from. So today we have a really awesome agenda lined up for y'all. We are going to make the announcements and welcome super short and painless. Then we have a really great panel discussion. We have three awesome experts here this evening from very different backgrounds and experiences that are going to help you navigate finding your right fit within company size and culture. And then we'll dive into some Q&A. And then if you didn't get a chance to network, 15, 20 minutes, hopefully some of the speakers will stick around for a few minutes to answer any questions that we don't get to. So what is General Assembly? For those of you who have never joined a workshop or an event with us before, first of all, thank you for joining. GA is a global tech education company. And we're focused on reskilling and upskilling in the most in-demand skills. So within digital, technology, marketing, business, data, and design. And our mission is to empower individuals to do what they love. And we do that in a few different ways. We offer full-time courses for those looking to change careers. We have part-time courses for those looking to level up. And we have short-form workshops, which range anywhere from 2 hours to a 1 or 2 day boot camp to test, dip your toes in the water, test out a new industry, and lots of skills and platforms that we teach as well. And then we have events just like this one, typically in person, but we are now currently 100% remote. So getting to bring in speakers from all over the country, which has been really fun. And we have those on a more than daily basis. So I would love to hand this over to Mark. I'm going to introduce you all to Mark, our awesome partner from ProductHired, who's also a speaker this evening. And would love for Mark to share with you a little bit about what he's been up to at ProductHired.
Hello, guys. Just thank you so much for showing up tonight. And again, thank you for being patient during the technical glitches. However, we're here. And so ProductHired is really proud to sponsor Product Job Club and all these talks. And what is ProductHired? We are a career site for product management, product owners, product marketing, user researchers, design, program, project management, and data science. There's a lot there. You can go and find jobs on ProductHired. You can post jobs for free on ProductHired. So recruiters, please post your jobs there. We have interview guides on, if you're interviewing at Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Lyft, Uber, so on and so forth. You can even find events on ProductHired, find events according to your skills or what you're interested in. Next screen. And also, we have a YouTube channel. We are streaming now live. I have verified it. Check out our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube, search ProductHired, find our channel, and we have all the videos from all the product things that we sponsor, plus all the product job clubs that we hold. So you can, review them. Lots of great information there, guys. I'm really serious. Please do subscribe. That's really important, and hit notifications all. Simply, I know everybody tells you this on YouTube, but we do that because the more we get, the more features we get. And right now we have the least amount of features you can have. So we need more people to subscribe. And guys, in the next week or two, ProductHired is going to be launching, I think, something that's really close to my heart, and I hope you're going to love, which is a coaching marketplace. I'm a huge believer in mentorship. We are giving these we are in a panel mentoring you on how to find the right job and the right role. You can get this mentorship, through ProductHired, and we're going to have free and paid, so you can get free people or paid resume review, portfolio review, or coaching on all those roles I mentioned. And so right now we're signing up, and we're going to be launching in the next few weeks. But if you're interested in being a coach or a mentor, or being coached and mentored, go ahead to producthired.com/coaching. Sign up. We'll be sending you email actually yet this week about the rollout that we're going to be doing. Very excited about this, and thank you so much.
Awesome. And don't worry about having to jot down the links. I will send this all to y'all tomorrow, follow along with the link to rewatch this video. If Mark, Vance, or Susan drop some great knowledge and you need to rewatch it, we'll give y'all all of that tomorrow. So no worries. So thanks to AirMeet, we have a little bit more flexibility than your typical Zoom here. So wanted to just go through some meeting norms that you may not be used to. So like I mentioned, we'll send you the link to the recording tomorrow. So we are going to be recording this. We can't see or hear you outside of the networking tables. So we do ask that you use the chat for, color commentary, sharing your LinkedIn. And then if you have questions during the panel that you want us to answer during the Q&A, please use the Q&A function that's on the right side. It just says questions. Feel free to upvote if someone asks a question that you really want to be asked. We love, making sure that we're answering the questions that are most useful for everyone. Be respectful, have fun, and if you are going to be posting on social media, would love for y'all to tag us. Cool. So I can stop sharing because nothing else is exciting there. Cool. So let's get this started. Would love to kick this off. So a little bit about me. I started at Texas State University, and I'm one of the few people who majored in what they practiced for a while. So I majored in advertising and got into the world of marketing. Susan's nodding her head. Sounds like she's got a similar path. And I've been in marketing and advertising ever since. I joined General Assembly about 2 years ago, but prior to actually, I had taken the product course. So it was a 10-week part-time course. I took it because I actually didn't want to go into product, but I was at a small agency. We were doing a lot of interactive projects, and I wanted to be a thought partner with my clients and really help them make these product decisions, but in a business savvy way that really drove business solutions that they were needing. So I took the product management course. I think I was the first or second cohort in Austin, and really dug what they were doing at General Assembly. They're not saving lives, but they're changing lives, and that was really exciting to me. So when a marketing position opened up, definitely raised my hand. I was working for myself for about 2 years prior to that. I started my own agency where I thought I would absolutely love, but realized quickly that I am entrepreneurial, but I'm not an entrepreneur. So if you go too small of a company, it's not exactly for me if it's my own, but if it's a small company, I found out I crush it. That I love working for somebody else, which is all about finding the right fit and finding the right size company for you. So that brings me here today. I'm super excited to lead this panel this evening. All about trying to find a really good fit for you and what kind of questions that you need to be asking during an interview to make sure it's a good culture fit. I think nothing's worse than, I know that job market's tough right now and it can be really challenging, but nothing's worse long-term for you than being in a company that's not a good fit. Size, culturally, or whether it's just long-term, aspirations, like making sure there's alignment there. So I'm very excited for that. Would love to introduce all the panelists. I'm going to have them actually introduce themselves and share a little bit about their background and how they got to where they are. So Vance, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I think that's really smart, what you said, in terms of taking a product course so that you could connect with clients, acting not as a product manager, but kind of knowing sort of what everything that's entailed in being a product manager is, and helping your organization by gaining that knowledge. So kudos to you. So for me, I'm a graduate of Carnegie Mellon's Entertainment Technology Center, which is a master's degree program. After that, I started working in game design in Silicon Valley for about 7 years before I became a product manager here in Southern California for 7 years. I've worked on a lot of products as a service, including, lots of Facebook games and social networking games, to financial tech, blockchain, just apps and websites that serve content. The games that you have heard of, that I'm sure everybody has heard of, or the game teams that I've had the pleasure of working with during my career include Tomb Raider, The Sims, and Grand Theft Auto. So those are the ones you've heard of. I've worked on a lot of other things that you haven't heard of, probably. But that's my path to product management, and also my relevant experience with working with really, really large organizations like EA, down to startups that are about maybe 8 people in a room, including the CEO.
You just made every gamer drool about that experience. They are just, I can feel it through the screen.
Yeah,
that's some very cool experience. Thanks so much. So Susan, would love to hear a little bit about what brought you here.
Thanks, Brianna. So first of all, you're right. My degree is in advertising, go advertising, and actually public relations from Michigan State University, but my son went to Texas State, so I'm a huge fan. There's nothing like graduating and jumping in the river. I mean, yeah, right? It's the best. So, but Michigan State does have a river running through it. So, what's interesting is I've worked for all different size companies. Started my career working for a small company. I figured I could sell other people better than myself. So I started working for an agency that opened up a, location here in Houston, and helped build that. Always focused on the tech industry. My whole background is talent attraction, acquisition, culture, employee engagement, all that fun stuff. Then ran my own company because I didn't want to go back into the office back in the day when I had my son. My biggest client became my employer, which was Compaq, which turned into Hewlett-Packard, which turned into Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. So even though you go to work for a company, they're going to merge, evolve, change, divest, acquire, all that fun stuff. And then about a little bit less than a year ago, ventured out on my own again, consulting with a really fun tech company that's doing software as a service, platform as a service, helping different people with coaching, doing branding. So, the key thing is always it's all evolving. It's all tech, involved. And it's, looking to the future. I mean, where do we go next? So there you go. But thank you for having me today.
Oh, yes. I love that. I love that you're trying to also mention that another university might try to compete with Texas State, but Texas State's the least competitive. We're just here to have a good time, Cool. Mark, we heard a little bit, but would love to kind of hear a little bit about your journey into product.
So I'm from Purdue University, and I graduated with essentially 5 majors and 3 minors, none of which were computer engineering. But I got a job down in Austin, Texas after graduation as a computer engineer. Quickly moved over to the communications department, then moved over to UX. And then, yes, I'm old, 2001 happened and the dot disaster happened. And so I moved, of course, where do you go? You move to Istanbul, Turkey. And I started consulting over there and mentoring people, and eventually started up my own software company in Istanbul, Turkey. And grew it for about 5 years, learned the quickest way to lose more money than anyone else, and shut my company down because taxes are terrible over there, and reopened it up in Austin, Texas again, moved back and grew that, sold it in 2012. Then I decided I'm tired of working for myself. So I actually went to work for a small boutique design company. You guys may have heard it, Handsome, here in town. Worked there for a short stint, learned a lot of things that I loved, and kind of realized I already kind of knew some of the stuff that I wasn't sure about. and then went to work for another company, a hyper growth company called TopTal. There as product and led multiple product initiatives at the same time. And then after there, I went to a smaller company, a startup, an ed tech called Boomwriter in Boston. And then after a stint there, decided, no, wait, startups drive me a little crazy. I want stability. I ended up at Broadway Technology, which is where I'm at currently as a director of the Knowledge Program. If you notice, I have multiple startups. I have 3 or 4 startups that I currently have. So I like working and I like doing things on the side, and I do both at the same time. And ProductHired is one of my startups that I worked on. So, yeah.
Amazing. So we have a little bit of Mark's obviously the startup realm. Susan has a lot of corporate experience, and Vance is a little bit of a hybrid, but definitely all in tech. So awesome. I would love to start this question off with Vance. So earlier in your career, you worked at EA, which I think we've established made all the gamers drool. That's a very large company, and you've since spent the last many years at fairly smaller organizations with, from my research, about 30 or less employees. Can you talk a little bit about your experience and reasoning behind this decision to stick with smaller companies?
Yeah, I think that, whether you're at a really large organization like EA or you're at a smaller startup, that's just a couple people. I think, my decisions have been mostly based on who are the 8 people that I'm going to be interacting with every day? Because, unless you are, I think even if you are basically, as the CEO of EA described, he's like, I manage my team, which we're the executive team, about 8 people, right? And I think it always comes down to your best decision is about that. And maybe later we're going to get into some other side benefits about once I've made that decision, what are the consequences of the decision I've made, maybe based on the 8 people or the 6 people that I'm going to interact with every single day, or sort of how the team that I'm going to be on is structured, which differs between maybe, that's something you might have to ask at a Facebook, but you're probably going to know and meet everybody when you're talking about a startup. But when I've made decisions based on who are the people I'm going to be interacting with every day, I think that's been, the best way to go about things for your day-to-day. And even at EA, I should say, I was hired there to, build simulation products for the mobile space and to be part of a small team that was going to create, games sort of under the sim label. And I knew the structure of the team that I was going to interact with and most of the people that were on that team through the interview process. And that was how I made the decision that, it doesn't matter how big the organization is outside of these people. I think this is a good decision for the people I'm going to interact with every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important. Your direct team can make or break that you're spending 40 plus hours a week with them, and understanding what that team's culture is critical. Yeah, thank you. So this next one's for Susan. You worked in corporate for the last 15 years. Can you share a bit about the culture of working in a large environment like that, and maybe some of the pros?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, it's interesting because the key thing I learned is even though it's large, the only thing constant is change. So I think your ability to change and deal with change effectively is number one. The other thing is it's finding, it's almost like I'm going to go back to the university because Texas State's pretty big. Michigan State's huge, right? It's looking at it like this large university. You've got to find your niche groups. So it's not only the team, like Vance said, that you're joining and who you're interfacing with every day, because those are your peeps, right? But it's joining the employee resource groups. It's looking for the intersectionality. It's looking for the interest groups. It's looking for agile teams you can join and make a difference. And then as you build your career, it's always building your knowledge. Like if you're part of a site, when we weren't all working from home, it's getting involved in the site, getting involved in community impact. So I think that's it. It's if you're joining a larger organization, find ways to make it smaller. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's important. There's so many benefits to working for a large company, but you are a small fish in a big pond, which is sometimes the con to working at a large company. So I think, getting more involved, I think that's some really great advice, or at least going in with that mindset. If you want to be known at that organization, these are things that you would have to or should be doing to make a name for yourself within that internal company.
Yeah, and I can give you a great example. I remember, there were a couple individuals that wanted more visibility, and they weren't necessarily getting it from that direct leadership team. So they're like, Susan, help me out here. And that's where getting involved in an employee resource group, building your leadership skills, building your development, getting involved in community impact, and then having people help tell your story. So you may be in one division, but the bigger the company, there could be 10 divisions. So it's connecting with people and helping them get to where they need to go is part of what you are allowed with a big company. It's all those different tentacles, if you will. So, don't be afraid to explore.
Awesome. Yeah. I agree with that. So this next one's for Mark. So you spent the majority of your career at companies that are on the smaller side, primarily within startups. Would love for you to share some pros on this. I know it takes a different kind of person to want to be putting themselves in the startup culture over and over and over again, but there's people that just thrive in this. Would love to hear some of the pros and the characteristics that really fit that kind of culture.
I think I've been in many different startups, and what I've learned is that there is no startup that's like alike. Like, people talk about startups, and then I realize, wait, I've been at startups that have been super, super hyper fast, and I have been in startups that I'm like, it's slow, and to get anything done is so slow, and you're like they're both small. What's the problem? Well, there were problems, but so I think there's a lot of pros. One thing that is true, I think, amongst all of them, and I worked at companies that were like 500 people that were hyper growth startups down to, 10. And I think the truth amongst them all is that you can't hide, right? And that can be a positive, and that can be a negative. Depends on you, and it also depends on the others, right? And I loved when you started this thing, because I didn't even think about this. I was thinking about fit in size and fit in like the role, but there's fit in culture, right? And culture is so huge. And when I think about all the companies I worked at, it wasn't the size that really bothered me so much or that helped me so much. It was all about the culture, and the culture of maybe those small teams, or how people interacted with one another, or how they dysfunctionally reacted to each other. And so definitely, I'm entrepreneurial. You guys have probably picked that up. The nice thing about startups is usually you can make impact that will impact the bottom line quicker, and you can make impact that you will see the results quicker generally. It doesn't have to go through layers and layers and layers of red tape. And, usually you can make impact really quick. You can also destroy things really quick. So it's a plus and minus, there. But I definitely enjoyed startups. Sometimes they're well funded. Sometimes they're not well funded. So you get different types of roller coasters depending on, am I going to get my paycheck next week, or does nobody not worry about that, and we know we're getting paid? So.
Yeah, definitely pros and cons to that. I mean, to everything, as we know, but definitely when you're working at a smaller startup, being more of a risk taker, being able to see efficiencies and being able to take the lead in making those efficiencies, and starting without there's oftentimes not really a process, so just creating that process for you. Those are all things that I think, as I've gotten in smaller companies, it's a little bit challenging sometimes. So For me, the right fit is more of a medium-sized company, but in a culture that is fast-paced and a little bit more competitive, but essentially all team player oriented. I think that's when you're at a smaller startup that's hyper growth focused. Having a lot more competitive edge than I do is something that's like really valuable, because I think if you're competitive, you're going to be on, grind all the time. So I think those are qualities that also like that Mark definitely has, and that will like make sure that you're a good fit for that culture.
Yeah. It's definitely more risk, and I love risk. I mean, I've lived around the world, right? And I definitely it's also, like you say, I think you brought it up there, you mentioned it, is you get to create there's a process, right? And I think in the smaller type of companies, it's more chaotic, which tends to work out in early companies because you tend to bubble up stuff. I'm in a company right now that's around 200 some people, and I am now the guy who's known as creating process, which shocks me that I'm that guy. But I create process and I make other people follow the rules. And it makes sense because at that size of a company, you need to get everybody in alignment. And I find that I'm actually also really enjoying that and good at it.
Yeah, that's amazing to be able to find and recognize what works for you.
One thing I'd like to add to what Mark said, which is really insightful, is that if you expand your thought about finding your fit to culture and not just the size of the company, which I think he's right to point out is really, really important. I think one advantage that you have when you're evaluating a startup versus a really large company is that, disagree with me, all of you, if you like, is that culture really comes all the way from the top. So if you're going to be a hire at, let's just say, one of Mark's startups, you're going to meet Mark as a leader or the CEO of the startup or co-founder, and you're going to be able to determine the culture from him, and because it's going to go all the way down to everybody. Whereas when you're signing up for a really huge company, you may know the culture of maybe those people you're going to work with, but you're not going to potentially get the culture of the entire company. And I think that one thing that I found that was maybe a shortcut to knowing what the culture was at EA is that the culture here at EA is, what are we going to do that's going to affect the stock price, is what I eventually found after almost a year. And I couldn't have known that because I couldn't meet with the CEO. He wasn't meeting with every single hire, right? Whereas at a startup, if you're being hired by a startup, you're probably going to be able to meet with a CEO or someone really, really senior. And that's the person that you should look to in terms of evaluating the culture for that organization.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. Culture is vital. In fact, you're talking about every company that I've worked with, I've always met a C-level person in the interview process, except one. I won't mention its name. And when I joined that company, oh my God, that culture was toxic. And then I met the CEO, and then I understood why. And so definitely, it's definitely top down. So.
Yeah. So go ahead, Susan.
I was just going to say, you bring up such a good point, because one of the things I had written in my notes was how in a big company you have the employee value proposition. You want to go to the career page, understand all that. But culture can differ based upon the job function or job family. It can differ based upon the site. Like in Houston, we had quite a different culture than, say, in Austin versus California. Like it just had a different feel, even though our employee value proposition was the same in the overall culture. And then certain countries, it was totally different. So I think that whole intersectionality, it's kind of like the benefit of the global company, getting to know these different cultures, but it is going to vary. And a lot of it is what you do and where you do it, and who you do it for. And the other interesting thing to me was, to your point, Mark, the impact of a leader, whether at the executive level or within your leadership chain, and how it can either improve or become toxic real quickly. So, it's all about the people.
Yeah, I think it goes back to Vance's point of who are the 8 people that are on your team that you're going to be working with every day, which was mentioned at the beginning of this. I think it's so critical. That direct team can make or break your experience, within your day to day. So one of my favorite questions that I had prepared, it's stereotypically people start with starting at a large company is much easier to then navigate to another large company or a medium or small. But my question is, what advice do you have for someone who started at a small company and wants to make that transition to a larger organization? That can be pretty challenging to either get attention in an interview with larger companies because they're just afraid to take that chance on you. Would love to hear some insights on that.
Go ahead, Mark.
Real quick, I think we're mostly all in the product area, whether it's design or product management. And one thing I've noticed a big difference is just the number of stakeholders you have to manage and report to. So in a small company, everybody's in the same room managing stakeholders. Even if you're remote, it's fairly simple, right? The higher up you get different business units, different teams, different leaders, and different people that they have to answer to, right? And so your stakeholder management, again, whether you're design or whatever else, if you have to present stuff, becomes much more complicated, and a lot of inter-office politics starts playing in, and a lot of different other mixtures that you never really dealt with before. So that's a big difference, I think, going from a smaller to a larger size company that I've seen. It's just the number of people you have to convince that you're doing a good job.
I want to give. It's such a complex question. I want to give one answer that I think is, kind of specific, and probably Susan knows a lot more about this than I do. So I wanted to go before you start talking so that you can either confirm or just completely disavow what I'm about to say. So I think one challenge that is very specific is translating your previous job title or job titles into the job title that is being looked for at a large company. Because generally large companies have very, very specific job titles. You're a software engineer 2, or you're a front-end engineer, or you're a full-stack engineer, or you're a game designer 1, or you're a game designer 3, or creative director. And translating the roles and responsibilities you may have had at your startup or your smaller company and being able to closely align the things that you did with one of those job titles so that you know exactly what you're aiming for, so that you can make the right case that that you're qualified to meet those roles and responsibilities as defined by that very specific title, because that's a large difference between a small startup and a large organization. I think that is a specific piece of advice that can help you make that transition.
It's a great point. And I know there's tools out there, where you can go look, it's a recruiter tool. It's like, a sorcerer tool where you can put in a job title and see all the other things you're called, which isn't a bad thing, right? I keep thinking Urban Dictionary because I've had too many teenagers in my house for years. But you can do it from a job title perspective too.
I would love a link to that.
Okay, yeah, because it's really cool because you can go in and then you can see, okay, cloud architect could be cloud engineer, could be, this or that or the other. I think the key thing that I find, and it's interesting because I've been part of these global panels right now where we're all sitting in a room discussing individuals, is, Brianna, I think our background in advertising and marketing is so key to interviewing. It's being able to, and Mark and Vance, to your points, to tell your story. So don't be afraid to talk to people in your 360, your friends, your family, your coworkers, and help them help you tell your story. But in some of these bigger companies like Amazon, they're going to want quantitative numbers behind it. So tell your story. Say, this is what I did. This is how I did it, kind of do like, this is how I built it. And this is what happened as a result. No matter the size of the company, people are looking to know you're going to come in, and the NBA playoffs are going on right now. I bring you on my team. You know how to pass the ball. You're not going to take the open shot if you don't have it, but you want to win. So anything you can do to show I'm a team player, this is what I accomplished, this is how I go about doing it, and help me understand how I can do it for you. I don't care the size of the company. That's somebody I want on my team.
And to like link, a concept from like what Mark was saying to what Susan was saying, something that I think I did a really bad job of in my early career is, like Mark said, you're going to be able to have a high impact when you're joining a team that's a startup or a small amount of people. And I think that's something you can highlight on your resume because you have such an impact, is you're going to be able to say something like I should have been able to say when I was applying for EA, is I created a game that went from 0 daily active users to over 200,000 daily active users, right? And someone at a big company isn't going to be able to make a claim like that. And so when you put that kind of number on your resume, where we were able to increase, the amount of clients that we had at our, at our startup from, 20% over the time that I was in charge of that. That's something that someone who is competing with you for a job at a larger company, they're probably not going to be able to have had that large of an impact. And so when you highlight that on your resume, I think that'll help you make your case.
Sorry to interrupt. Confirming amen on that is I'm a hiring manager. If the resume does not have impact statements, like you made this impact, grew revenue, grew user engagement, grew something by a number, I will not look at your resume. I'll just go on to the next one. I don't want to know that you sat in a seat and did your job. Congratulations, right? No, I want to know the impact you made while you were at that last company. So
yeah, I +1 to that as well. I think that it's also super important. I think y'all all said everything that I want to add on to, but I'll try to keep it brief. From the beginning, if whatever company you're applying to, you really do feel like it's a good fit and you want that, you want to really be an eligible candidate. I think also if you're going from a small company to a large company, because you've worn so many hats, they don't care about that. You need to strip it down to what only you put the really relevant experience so you can hyper focus on how you're contributing to that role. And because you're at a small company wearing all those other hats, some of these other really cool accomplishments that you did that feel really significant to you are not going to be important in order to land that interview. And then taking it a step further, in the interview, if it comes up where maybe a side project that you did actually is relevant, like mentioning it, but like Susan said, really nailing and getting down your pitch and your story. It's something that I'm actually really horrible with because I'm in marketing and extrovert. I've relied so much on the power of my network that I've already created to get my foot in the door and then get that, basically take it home. That I am absolutely horrible at, really getting all of that experience in a nice package bow to share why the experience that I've had at the previous company, it's relevant to the next one. So I think that's really important in making sure that you're communicating why this experience was relevant. And a lot of that is trimming a lot of the fat that you did that's really cool, but not relevant at all to what you're applying for.
Brianna, I love what you just shared. And one of the things I share with individuals is it just don't, we don't want to see your job duties. It's almost like saying, if you're, giving somebody a recipe, this is bread and it has flour and it has eggs and you have to put it in the mixer. It's just, I just read someone's resume the other day and I was like, wait, I don't need to know that you input stuff in a computer. It's like, what did you accomplish? Number one.
Susan froze.
Well, I'll interject here to briefly disagree with that. I have heard from recruiters that, oh, you didn't have this specific skill or responsibility on your resume, so I couldn't pass you on to the next round. I mean, certainly Susan and Mark have done more hiring than I have. I've mostly been on the being hired side. But I definitely, I think it's about finding a balance rather than just creating a narrative, because certainly there are recruiters who have, honestly, they have no idea how to do your job, and they're looking for, did you program in this language, in this language, in this language? And if you don't have those three things listed, I can't pass you on to the initial interview.
That's a really good point.
In my experience, there's a lot of different types of recruiters. There's some recruiters who literally just run it through a keyword search,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And then there's some who like, they want to find the right initiative, like the person of passion and power, right? And they want to hear that story. So the truth is, you don't know which recruiter you're going to get. So, definitely make sure your resumes have the right keywords. Understand if you're sending your resume through a robot. So tailor it for the robot, or if it's going to a human, then tailor it for a human. But, you never know what you're going to get. And that's life.
And I agree with what you said, Mark, there in terms of my hiring experience. When I'm sitting down across from somebody, I don't care that, they program in this language, in this language, in this language. I'm much more concerned about, you're passionate about learning about this, or you're passionate about contributing to the company in this way, whatever that narrative is. That's more about, that's more what I'm excited to hear about once you've gotten past that first hurdle, right? Which, like you said, could be, again, anything. It could be a robot. It could be someone who really cares about the company.
And just so I know people are probably curious about the process, right? So at my company, when I'm hiring, the recruiters meet with me and I tell them everything I'm looking about. I create up a job description. They make it smaller because I write a lot. And then they basically, they pull in leads. They vet the ones that they think are going to be interesting to me. So they vet them. Then they send me over a load of them. I review them. And then I pick the ones that I want to have a call with. So I do the first call. And by doing that, so you still, like, even though I'm a nice guy and I want to talk to really passionate people, there's still a filter before me that hopefully was calibrated somehow by me. But you never know, right? You never know.
Yeah, but the counterfactual with that also is that, you're heavily involved in the process where, obviously I could see the kind of culture that you would have at your startup, whereas someplace else, the hiring manager or even the CEO of the company may just want a recruiter that's going to bring them 100 resumes a week. And they really don't care. They're barely involved in the process. They just want to turn down a bunch of resumes or, hire someone that they think they're getting a good ROI on because they have so much experience, but we're only going to pay them this. That's, you never know who is on the next end of that filter as well.
And I think it's important to know, like, pre-COVID was the last time that I did a major hiring spree in my department. And we get thousands of resumes. So I cannot go through all of them. And so there's definitely, you got to find a way to get to the top. Use networking. I post all my jobs on LinkedIn, and I'm amazed by how few people actually message me. I'm like, please message me. Like, I will totally refer you, or I will talk to you to see if you're a fit. And they don't. Wow. It's weird. Just reach out to the people if you figure out who the hiring manager is.
Yeah, we one of my friends actually runs a really great workshop on like LinkedIn networking. I think also people are in the company are willing to, or I think generally speaking, people want to help and provide insight. So if you reach out to someone to find out what the culture is actually like, and just very informal, like, we're in a fully remote world, being COVID, reaching out to someone that works there and be like, hey, I saw you, but you went to my university and now you're at this company that I'm kind of interested in. Just want to, can we schedule a 15-minute, Zoom call over lunch so I can like pick your brain on what it's like at this company. I think that's like, such an important element that people kind of forget that is still on the table. Like, you can still reach out on LinkedIn to someone and ask them for a no strings attached, I'll send you a Starbucks, gift card for a cup of coffee chat. Generally people want to help. So I think that's like really understanding is important.
to make it not so selfless, the truth is hiring has skyrocketed now. Like my company is hiring a lot of software engineers. And if I refer you and you get hired, I get money. So please come to me. I want to refer you.
So you heard it here. Reach out to Mark on
vacation.
You need a job.
So definitely reach out to them if it's selfish. I want money. So definitely. And I'm sure other companies are the same. Awesome.
Glad you got back in, Susan. You missed Vance disagreeing with what you said. No, I'm just kidding.
You did, Vance. You guys can see it's lightning behind me.
It's crazy weather. It's Texas. What do you?
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I heard thunder, lightning, and then
I don't see any. Vance is in sunny Marina Del Rey, so we don't need to hear about your good weather over there, Vance. I don't see anyone's questions coming in. So that's totally fine. I'll round it out with 2 more, but if anyone does have questions, would love to get them answered. So feel free to either post it in the chat, or in the questions box, and I'll be sure to, get these, folks to answer for you. But in the meantime, I'll ask 1 or 2 more questions. Salary. Yes, this is a great. So often people assume that corporate jobs pay a higher salary. I think that's like textbook situation. I know that was true in agency life. I knew if you go client side, you're going to be making double. Is that true in the tech world in your experience, or can startups afford to match these pay expectations?
I'll start.
Okay, you start. Susan, go ahead.
Yeah.
You disappeared.
So in my mind, we always, as a big company, found the startups to be more, offer bigger salaries. Plus, they offered stock. So many times the attraction for joining a smaller tech company is they throw in the stock options, which, the tech world stock options have been going through the roof. The other thing to keep in mind, the bigger the company, like I became an expert in architecture, but not like building things, job architecture. So to your point, Vance, there's a level 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. And you had to have certain things to be at such and such level. So everything's scoped based upon affordability. And then that range could be like $50,000, $60,000 difference. So I think where big companies sometimes can offer a little bit different is when you look at total rewards. So salary is one thing, stock's another, but it might be some of the benefits that they have, the volunteer programs, the employee resource groups, the interest groups, some of the learning and development programs. It's more the programmatic stuff, but if you're looking at true dollars, a lot of times I found we could not compete with the smaller companies, especially those California ones. They ramped everything up.
I'll give some feedback on startups. So the truth is, it depends. It depends on big and it depends on small, right? Are you going to Google, Facebook, or are you going to Kodak? I don't know, is Kodak still big or not? I don't know, right? So what I would say is look at the funding, right? Or look at the revenue. So for funding for startups, I would say 20 million or more, and you're going to be able to get, if you're getting there early, you're going to be able to get a decent salary. I used to think 10 million was a lot for a company raising revenue, and then I went to work for one that raised 10 million, and I realized, poof, it's gone. And so definitely, always take things at Angels List or companies like that to see what their funding rounds are, A series, B series, and so on. When it's a larger company, you can go to Glassdoor and figure out salaries and the benefits and kind of figure it out through that. I wouldn't use tools like Paysa. I've taken a look at Paysa and those companies that you can find the salary in a certain position in a certain company, and it's almost always wrong. I don't know if people just lie when they tell companies what they make, but it's usually lower. That's what I found. And so, you can do your research. You can figure out what the salaries are out there. You can see what the benefits are, stock, so on and so forth. Look at Glassdoor, other things like that. Ask the networks, ask people who left, right? They'll be more than happy to spill the beans, I'm sure.
Yeah. Again, speaking more from the employee side than the hirer or founder side, my general impression is that, especially in the tech world, that's all that I know about, is that mostly in terms of just the base salary, it's equivalent in my experience. I think that the details here are twofold. One, I think a detailed piece of feedback I need to give on this is that you need to be very careful when you're interacting with a startup that's going to offer you stock. And frequently they will adjust your offer based on how much stock you would like to take. Is to be very careful in that negotiation, because if you're a founder, Mark will probably tell you, if you say, I just want to get paid and I don't care about your stock, that's probably not good feedback for him. He probably doesn't want to have that, even though that may be the way you want to negotiate. So you have to be very careful on that front in terms of making that exchange. But in my experience, they've been pretty equivalent. I will say that at very, very large companies, my experience is that they're pretty inflexible in terms of what they can offer you. They probably have a job title and they say, this is the range for that job title based on your experience, and your experience is 3 years, and thus we put that equation, into the computer, and we can only offer you, this number. And that, at a startup, there's a way for you to continue to negotiate, and they have a lot more flexibility because they don't have 50 other people who do your job title. And if they put your salary 20% in front of all of those people, that's a problem, right? So, I think that would be my.
Kind of on your thing on the stock and startups, as an employee negotiating, I like money. It allows me to do things. I like vacations. Again, we're hiring at Broadway. We're looking for referrals. But one thing that I would say is, when I negotiate, I really want money than stock, right? When they run out to the top of that money, then I start negotiating stock, right? To me, stock is like funny money, right? I don't know. I mean, I'm going to work equally hard whether I have stock or I don't. I work hard, right? But at the end of the day, it's funny money, and the vesting periods are so long. I mean, in startups, I tend to stay from the stability of the startup, usually a year and a half max. Well, vesting periods are like 4 years. So I know most of it is funny money. Like, it's unlikely I'm going to be there 4 or 5 years for it to be fully vested. So I don't really care about stock. If I get some, great. I will tell you, at Broadway, I got some stock, and literally it was like a 4-year vesting. I thought it was a joke. It's the first time it turned out well to me, because they actually sold the company and I immediately got vested and I got money, and I was like, damn, I should have negotiated for more. So sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't.
100%.
There's nothing that beats cold hard cash.
Yeah,
I definitely think
right. I just think that 2 examples from my life is one, I was interacting with the CEO of a company and negotiating, and he was trying to make that give and take between money and stock, and I knew that he was very sensitive about I'm going to have this perception. Whereas I'm in the same bucket as you, Mark, that it doesn't matter to me if I have a lot of stock or not. I'm going to show up to work and work hard because I love what I do, and I love the team and I believe in it and so forth. But I think that he was sensitive to that, so I want to put that disclaimer out there to people. But 2, I worked at a company called Slide that was actually acquired by Google, and I didn't vest any of my stock. I had the options, and then I realized when I took out the calculator later on, even though they were acquired by Google, which is the thing that you love, you dream about that, right? I would have made $1,200 after taxes. So, if I invested all of my stock, it really is funny money. Mark is absolutely.
It is, yeah.
So something else, I'm so sorry, but something I want to bring up, because this is really important when you're negotiating, is you have to understand not only how much you're earning day one, but what your KPIs are, what your key performance indicators are, what does success look like? Do they give performance reviews? If they give performance reviews, do you get a salary increase? If you get a salary increase, what's the range? Does everybody get it, or just 1%? And not only your salary increase, you have to understand your bonus structure. the key is if you're looking to stay with a company more than a year, you want to know not only this is where you're starting today, but what do I look like? Are they going to judge me 6 months from now? Are they going to judge me a year from now? And I can't stress that enough. No matter what the size of the company is, know that, and know, like, even in a big company, that can change, right? I mean, we had years, back in the day at HP, where we didn't get reviews. We had a new CEO come in, and we had a review after 6 months. Everybody got a raise. Everybody got a bonus. Know that when you're interviewing, because just looking at the package day one can be so limiting. And Brianna, I didn't mean to cut you off, but as you guys were talking comp, I'm thinking so important, right? Not just looking today. But what does it look like tomorrow?
100%. I think it also is so different from depending on where you are in your career. So if you're just now getting in, I think following experience is personally speaking, I think following the experience is so much more important at the beginning than following the money. But I do think it comes a time in your career where then you prioritize, a balance of, making sure, the compensation is aligned with your expectations, or else you're just going to leave sooner than you were anticipating, and that's a lose-lose for everybody.
And that's a tactic that I use, especially, like I said, on the employee side, to say, okay, maybe today you're not meeting my number, but what's the day in the future where you might be able to meet my number, right? Where if they say, oh, we can't evaluate you and change your salary for a year, then maybe I'm not as invested, or I'm not as likely to take that number that's different from my number. But if they say, oh yeah, everybody has to do an evaluation every 3 months, and you're only 1 month away from it, and we have to do the evaluation there, and we might change the number, okay, I might be willing to accept something lower. And I think that's another good negotiating tactic and key information for you to know.
Yeah.
And I think, Brianna, you made it really clear, is that there's a lot of variables into choosing a company. There's fit, there's culture, there's salary, there's experience. We all want it all, right? And, but you're never going to find it. I've worked in really cool companies, but none of them were perfect, right? And there was always some give and take somewhere along that equation. And, finding the best fit, I think, it should be the goal.
Yeah, 100%. Agree with that. So Susan, someone asked a question, would like some clarification. When you were talking about the job titles, if you're at a small company trying to find job titles that align with your next job, I think they just wanted some clarity. Should they be adjusting their titles on the resume to match to match the next job, or great question.
Yeah, great question. It's almost that bridge between the recruiter and the candidate that we're talking about. So a good recruiter or sourcer, right? I just was at some detailed sourcing training. They're doing this already for you. They're looking at, all right, what else is this person called, at XYZ company. So no, if they're proactively going after you, they've already done it. But what you may want to do is understand in your job search what else it could be called, and help show what you did and how it relates to what they're looking for. The thing I want to caution you against, and I saw this in a resume, we did a sort-a-thon with India. It was so interesting. Don't go throwing buzzwords on your resume. I know that's like really common today. If you're technical and every keyword buzzwords on it, they're going to go, you have no depth, and don't inflate what you did. Because if they know what it's going to take to get something done, your credibility's gone away and you're not going to be talked to. So make sure what you put there is something you can talk about, you can articulate. Because think about it this way. When you're asked a question, if you haven't really done that and they ask you to give them a schematic, you're not going to be able to tell them how you did it.
So not changing your title on your resume, but making sure you understand what that would translate to at another company.
Exactly. And translate that experience. Or you might want to say, this is similar, at my company, we called it XYZ. And we talked earlier about the power of referrals. This is where, to Mark's point, make somebody at that company money. If you know somebody that you're connected to on LinkedIn, call them. The company I'm consulting with right now is like a 5K fee. I'm begging them. Reach out to your networks, bring us in people, call that person, help them understand what you did, and help them sell you to whoever the hiring manager is.
One thing I would say on the title thing, this is the advice I give, and I think it's good, is, there's titles and there's roles. And sometimes companies choose the craziest titles, and you really should change it. Don't lie, please. Don't read what I'm saying. Do not fib on what you did, right? But the role that you most did should be represented as your title, right? For example, when I was at Boomwriter, I was Senior Vice President of Product Management and User Experience. It's like, what senior, who's the vice president? I want to know, right? I mean, it was a startup. And so when I had that on my resume, I got no hits. And I realized it's because people are like thinking I'm expensive or something, right? I changed it to head of product, which is what I was, right? Immediately I started getting hits, right? And I was the head of product. There was no other head of product. There was no VP or anything like that. I was. And so that's an example of, one, like really finance companies, big corporations use senior vice presidents, blah, blah, blah. Like, not me. And so that fit me and my culture. It fit the type of company I was looking for. And it really made people not be afraid of my resume. And the other thing I think is what was, what was the second point that Susan made? Because it was so good. What was it, Susan? Because I had a point on it.
Oh my goodness, you're expecting me to remember what I just said. I think it was just a tailoring your experience, right? Like understanding the role and being able to story tell, how it fits. They're not going to know that, it was the references. You're talking about like getting somebody the employee referral fee, talking to them, helping them understand how you're a fit and helping them help tell your story. Is that what you wanted?
I was going to say something, but it's gone. It's gone now. It'll maybe come back.
I'll write down what I say next time. We'll close caption it.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank y'all so much for joining this evening, sharing your insights. This is really awesome. I would love to close it out with either sharing one last thing that maybe we didn't get to, advice for someone who's, either transitioning jobs or exploring different companies to find their fit, or your favorite resource, whether that be a blog, a podcast, a book for just ongoing education, something inspiring, uplifting, motivational, either one.
I can start. So I started listening to, if anyone knows who John Maxwell is, he's a leadership guru, and he does a daily Minute with Maxwell. So it's 1 minute at a time. I just finished reading Atomic Habits. He talks about that 1% thing you can do. Subscribe to Minute with Maxwell. It's free. They're inspiring. He gives you this very great advice to start your day. He shows you how important it is to not expect perfection and keep driving forward. So that's my secret to starting my day with the right sauce, in addition to trying to get up early and run. Minute with Maxwell and Atomic Habits. Don't try to change the world. Look for ways to do things 1% at a time.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan.
So this is a weird one. So I'm kind of burnt out from reading so many dang books on product management. Everybody seems to be writing a book. I feel like I should write a book now, sell it. Maybe I can make some money, take that vacation. But no, one of the things I love watching YouTube videos on people with crazy opinions in technology. And one of my favorite shows is, I know people are going to, Tech Lead show. The tech lead, he's a guy who he says former Google tech lead, former Facebook millionaire. He always puts that in his title. And he is so hilarious and yet so often right about the inside of how things work in the tech in Silicon Valley. And so I always wait for his videos to come out a couple of times a week. Sometimes they're really strange. Sometimes they're pretty out there. and sometimes they're just like spot on about the hypocrisy goes on in some of these companies. But I love the Tech Lead Show. Look it up on YouTube. It's hilarious.
I'm a little bit stumped, so I'll just give one piece of very practical advice that you can do, which is to go to your peers, other people who are applying for whatever job you're applying for, and show them your resume. Have them show you their resume, and just say, you look at that one, I look at this one, and let's give each other feedback.
I love that. I've actually never thought to do that I've done peer exchange, but never if like, oh, we're looking at the same job. Can I see what you're including? I think that's fantastic. Very interesting. Well, we are at time. We actually went a little bit over, so thanks to the attendees for sticking with us and dealing with a little bit of tech issues at the beginning. And a huge thank you to Mark, Vance, and Susan for being here this evening, and ProductHired for joining us. So I will send an email out tomorrow that has, hopefully tomorrow, but if not tomorrow, promise by the next day. We just need to wait for the recording to come back. Go ahead,
Don't forget about the Job Summit next week.
Yes, we're producing, it's called Shift Ed. It's a virtual conference to power your career. So it's an entire week of free educational workshops, inspiring speaker sessions, panels, really lots of focus on career development there for people who are shifting careers or or just job seeking. So check it out. I'll include the link right here in the chat for y'all. And hopefully see y'all there. But we have lots of great speakers, and it's gonna be a fun week. So thank y'all so much, and have a really great evening.
Have a good night, y'all.